Bitcoin continues to chop, and yes, this is hurting a lot of the altcoin market, as you guys can see on my screen. But like I said, over the last couple of days, I'm not too concerned at all with these short-term moves because I do believe that by the end of this week, we will be trading significantly higher. On top of that, I do think that the entire month of July is going to be extremely bullish for all of crypto. And in this video, I actually want to go over a lot of things that are happening right now on which we should be focused on more than price action. And the reason why I say that is because all of these things will lead to significant price action. So number one, when we look at the space right now, Bitcoin is down 1.5% and most altcoins are reacting in a much more exaggerated way. This is because of how high Bitcoin dominance is. I've been talking about it. This is what the overall market looks like in the last week as well. You know, Bitcoin is down 1%. In the last week, Bitcoin is down 1%. Ethereum is down 2%, and we could see across the board that a lot of altcoins outside of like XRP are down multiple percentage points on the 1 week. If we actually look at this, we could see that some are actually down double-digit plus figures. So when we think about that, most of the altcoin market will react in its own way to what Bitcoin does, while Bitcoin dominance is above 65%. But for the most part, XRP has been pretty stable over the last roughly, few days. I know that we did have that nice little run up to like $2.30 some cents, and we're back down to about like $2.17. And a lot of people are actually upset about this. Again, right now, we're just in accumulation zones. I want you guys to understand that nothing is going to happen. I'm going to stress this. Nothing is going to happen on altcoins until we see Bitcoin break a new all-time high, while Bitcoin dominance is breaking down. So if you're getting impatient now, I hate to break it to you, but you're going to have to wait a little bit longer, okay? But outside of the daily, this is what the weekly looks like, and this is what the monthly looks like. Again, we're pretty much still sitting in red on all three of these, time frames. Outside of that, the hourly does still look pretty good. We're starting to see some altcoins jumping on the hourly, but for the most part, we're mainly looking at the daily, weekly, and monthly for them to actually, turn green, and for altcoin, the entire altcoin market to actually look pretty good and solid on the monthly, weekly, and the daily. We want them to actually bounce back off of the lows and follow stocks in a huge way. Which, talking about stocks, stocks are making all-time highs. S&P at almost 6,200. Again, I do think that the next level here is about almost 7K on the S&P. It's going to take a little bit of time for us to actually get there, but I just think that the S&P continues to rally throughout the summer into, of course, the fall time frame. Now, while we are rallying on the S&P, yes, I do believe that crypto does follow it. Right now, with the crypto market, 3.28 trillion. We're down about almost a percentage point today. Fear and greed pretty neutral. Altcoin season starting to gain a little bit of traction. 23 out of 100. Bitcoin still at about roughly 105.7K. Ethereum at 2,400. And like I said, with XRP $2.17. This is what Bitcoin looks like on the weekly. So I've mentioned it, right? We're just kind of squeezing here. We're in this wedge, waiting for something to happen. Now, this recent move on Bitcoin, everyone is kind of panicky here a little bit, and they think, oh, I thought this was going to be bullish. Guys, Bitcoin is down right now about 2.7%. On the full extension here, it's about roughly 3% or so. This is absolutely nothing. In fact, we could still retest the bottom of this trend line in this weekly candle, which would be about a 5.8% drop. Or maybe it's, next week's candle, which would be about 4.97, almost a 5% drop on Bitcoin. But we'll squeeze between this wedge, and once we squeeze and we break out of it, the next target is 120K. We saw this in the past as well, right? There's been many times where we've been squeezing in a wedge. Even back here, the perfect example is March all the way into, of course, the November timeframe of 2024. This was all one extended wedge waiting for a big breakout while we just kind of chop to the downside, and then we finally start to have that nice uptrend form on Bitcoin. The same goes for, what our price action looks like right now, where we're just kind of squeezing in this weekly wedge, and this is more of a macro wedge, so it does take a little bit longer. But once this does finally break out, it's going to be very exciting. So far, about 42 days sideways, and in this downtrend, we're just waiting for something to happen here. That's why I said like it's going to be a little bit boring while we remain in accumulation zones. Even XRP is consolidating in an accumulation zone, and what this looks like right now is we're hitting this upper trend line. Even on that nice little run to like $2.30, we tried to break out, we failed to do so. Now I do think that we just kind of chop here. We might even have a nice little wick back down to the $2 range, $2.04 or so. Or we could finally break out of this. We hit that $2.46 level. We retest the trend line around like $2.13, and then we just go ballistic. Now that would align with everything happening around the Fed, around these legislation bills with the US, and it would also align with the market really kind of catching up to stocks. It would also give Bitcoin a little bit of time as well. And most of these moves will actually happen in July. July will be the start of all of this. Just like I've said in the past, I'm still looking at the end of June into the beginning of July. July is the time to really kind of focus on a lot of altcoins. I'm telling you guys that right now. I've mentioned it many times over. The market has been brewing for a bit of time. This is what Bitcoin dominance looks like as well. With Bitcoin dominance, we're still just waiting for a major significant downtrend to actually start officially on this. But what we actually have in front of us right now in the traditional markets is the dollar actually crashing. This is what the dollar looks like. We're at 96, almost 96.7 exact. And what's crazy about this is we lost almost every single major support zone on the dollar. Now, the crazy thing about this is people are actually getting bearish on crypto at a time where the dollar looks like this. I want to go back in time to 2020 into 2021, where the dollar was also crashing in a very significant way. Let me ask you this. Who was bearish on crypto during this time? During this time on the dollar, almost everyone was still very bearish on altcoins. They didn't think that altcoins were going to move. This was into 2020. And it was actually, it was into 2021 from 2020. And during this time, this is right when Altseason actually officially kicked off, when the dollar started to rebound. Now, the reason why I'm focused on what the dollar is doing right now is that this is a massive leg down. This is a crazy crash on a global reserve currency. When we are thinking about the dollar crashing and the dollar being weak, it's very bullish for risk on assets. I even said it over here. The DXY is crashing right now, signaling risk on assets like stocks and crypto are about to pump even higher. Here we actually have breaking news. US dollar suffers worst start to year since 1973. Well, yeah, this is a very big deal. We should be focused on what the dollar is doing here. Now, everyone thinks that this is just going to continue to crash and that the dollar is officially done. Again, we've been hearing this for so long now. But I actually do think that we probably start to have a nice uptrend start here officially, and then we finally break out. When we break out on the dollar, by the way, that will signal the end of the bull run. It's very similar to, this time back here. I've mentioned this many times over. The dollar was starting to break out. And then, of course, by November, it started to officially break to the upside. This was the top of the bull run right here. So when we think about that, we're definitely watching the dollar for any significant strength to really form on the DXY. We need to take a little bit of time every so often to just watch this chart. But so far, this is signaling that we should be bullish on stocks and crypto. On top of that, right, we go over here. Breaking, the US M2 money supply jumped plus 4.5% year over year in May to a record 21.94 trillion. This marks the 19th consecutive monthly increase. It has now surpassed the previous all-time high of 21.86 trillion posted in March of 2022. Furthermore, inflation-adjusted M2 money supply rose 2.1% year over year last month, the largest increase since early 2022. Since 2020, the US M2 money supply has risen nearly 7 trillion or 45%. The US dollar's purchasing power is in an external bear market, which is also signaling that we are going to see money shifting into risk on assets. Again, when we start to see the M2 supply expanding, it means liquidity. liquidity is going to flood these markets. This is the M2 supply globally. We could actually see that China is up 149%. When we look at the US, it's actually up about 83.55%. I believe that the US will catch up to China. The EU, 58.37%, Germany, 57.13%, Japan, 39.68%. So when we think about what's happening here, we are starting to see the M2 supply globally expanding in a huge way. We are going to continue to watch this. The next release in terms of the US M2 supply, and pretty much every M2 supply here, is going to be July. I'm very, very interested in seeing what happens this month with the M2 supply, because again, once we start to see this continue to expand, it means that we are going to see a major move to the upside across the board for stocks and crypto, because when M2 supply is starting to expand, it means money is flooding the market. We already talked about this with the Fed, right? We talked about it just recently. I said it on my X account, and I also said it on a previous YouTube video. I was talking about how the Fed is silently injecting liquidity, and everyone is celebrating it. Again, we should be celebrating this. We should, because again, stocks are at a new all-time high. This is with the help of course, the Fed. And I do think that crypto is going to follow it very closely. We just have to wait a little bit more because, again, crypto does lag traditional markets in a significant way. But outside of that, right, when we think about what's happening here, things are about to shift in a huge way. This is why I don't think we should be getting bearish right now. I don't think that we should be impulsively selling or trying to jump out of this market or getting even impatient. I think that right now is probably the best time to just sit back and relax, waiting for, crypto to finally do its thing. We are going to have a major push to the upside yet again, just to follow stocks, but also the signal here is the dollar and the M2 supply, on top of course, what this admin is doing. And the Kobayashi letter did put this into perspective. We have, this is wild. We now have a president who is actively calling for interest rates to be cut to as low as 1%. And he is actively stating that he will be replacing Fed Chair Powell with someone who will immediately cut rates. Meanwhile, stocks are at all-time highs. Real estate prices are at all-time highs. US debt is at all-time highs, and crypto is at all-time highs. If the new Fed chair actually cuts rates to 1%, we are going to witness perhaps one of the biggest runs of all time in stocks and real estate. There has never been a time in history where the Fed cut rates to 1% with the stock market and home prices at all-time highs. In May of 2026, Fed Chair Powell's term will officially come to an end. If rates are truly going to 1%, everything is cheap. Of course, cutting rates 1% will be an inflationary move. However, the near-term effects on asset prices would be massive. Just imagine a situation where you reintroduce 3% mortgages in this market. Now, again, when we think about this, right, yeah, we will see a surge across the board, but this will be short-lived in my opinion. The reason why I say that is because this will also lead into one of the biggest bear markets in history. But initially, we will see a massive push to the upside across the board. This is why I've also said, we are about to have the last wave hit this market in a big way, but once it crashes, you better have taken profits off the table and de-risk. Because again, what will happen after all of this is said and done is the party ends and we see all the lights go out, and who's ever still left at that party is going to be left behind in a big way. And it's not going to be in a good way either, because what we will see is the largest crash in history across the board, including, of course, crypto. I've talked about this on multiple occasions, but I do think that we have a major push to the upside. And the question is, what does the Fed do at the end of this month? Is the Fed going to cut rates in July, or are they going to cut rates in September? Either way, we have 2 months to really kind of look forward to. We are currently in the first one. The next one is only 2 months away. So now is the best time to lock in officially and get ready for what happens next, because I do believe that crypto is going to follow stocks. We still have yet to see, Bitcoin really do this just yet. The last time that we actually made a significant push to the upside was back in the end of May. I'm watching Bitcoin closely. I'm watching Bitcoin dominance even closer. But the main thing that I'm actually watching right now is the dollar, because yes, I do think that this will lead to stocks and crypto going significantly higher because of how weak the dollar actually has been. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on because of more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.